Robert Morningsky, a truth seeker of the Hopi and Apache traditions, tells a story he learned from his people about a race of beings who knew no limitations, who existed far outside this physical universe. One day, one of them declared his intention to visit Earth and to take on a body, just for the adventure of it, for the experience. His friends cautioned him, as this universe had a reputation as amnesia-producing, a place of no return. But the entity laughed that off and promised to come back after one lifetime. Centuries passed and the entity never came home. One of his comrades decided to enter the physical world to go look for his friend. He promised not to get lost in matter and to return with the other individual. More centuries passed and neither being returned. So another immortal entered physical mass, and he also never came back. In time, many members of these unlimited beings incarnated in a human form, and the story goes, none of them yet has gone home. The term narcissism and empath have grown in popularity within the spirit of this age, and for a good reason. It is a part of our core curriculum as beings going through a spiritual awakening, to be able to understand what these forces are from a larger cosmic perspective. So today, I'm going to be explaining the spiritual, esoteric, and cosmic origins of narcissism. In my video, Service to Others and Service to Self Explained, I talk about how there are two dominant pathways within creation. One, service to others, the other, service to self. This paradigm was given to us in this new age through the Law of One raw material. But that is not the first source to ever come and teach about there being two dominant pathways within creation. This has been known even as far back as Edgar Cayce, and even more so than that, through Atlantis. So there being these two dominant pathways within creation, one that creates through the service of giving and disseminating and sharing with others, and this other pathway, service to self, which takes, which forces, which siphons and manipulates in order to serve oneself, is the origins of what we know and what we call in this age narcissism. We typically see narcissism only through a third-dimensional human perspective, one that only applies if we're talking about somebody who's displaying some sort of disorder that has symptoms of them being highly selfish, highly manipulative. And in reality, narcissism is so much more. That's only one of its manifestations. That's one of its symptoms of a much larger ailment within all of the cosmos. But to truly understand the depths of narcissism and its role in creation, we have to go way far into the metaphysical realm of this. So I am going to be speaking about our cosmology. Our cosmology has to be understood before we can start talking about narcissism in a truly holistic and intelligent way. So, the cosmology that I will be teaching narcissism through is a creation story. And this creation story is one that personally I've been given since I could remember. If you'd like to know what I mean by that, you can watch my video on it titled, Where Do I Get My Information From? But I'm not the only one who's received this information from the Akashic. There are several different channeled sources of information throughout every age that has this cosmology, that has taught and has known of this cosmic origins within creation. The most intelligible, shall we say, the most respected, I would call Edgar Cayce's material, and yet another separate source with this very same cosmology is found in Cian de Rohan's book, Right Use of Will. And yet another source of this very same cosmology can be found in John Pineal's The Children of the Law of One. And in the most recent age, we have Robert Monroe's books that tell of there being some sort of cosmic origin story, just in a more modern setting, in a more modern tone with modern language. It's even been known and taught of in the Hopi tradition. So what this cosmic origin story entails is that there was a spiritual realm that developed consciousness, And it wanted to start creating in the physical realm because it wanted to explore all of its known dimensions. And so it projected its own spiritual consciousness into the physical realm. And it got to explore and discover, and it got to shapeshift, and it got to be whatever it wanted to imagine and whatever it wanted to manifest, but in physical form. And then it accidentally, very innocently, got locked into matter. It got what one could say trapped in its own limited physical material form on accident. So a lot of times there's different traditions or there's just different belief systems that think that the physical material plane in and of itself is the thing that's wrong. We think that the physical plane is somehow a prison planet and we are its prisoners, when in reality, it was all a huge misunderstanding. Once we dropped so low in consciousness that we forgot our eternal nature and got lost inside our own illusion. But in order to create an experience of other selves, we needed to forget the truth of our oneness so that we can experience lower and lower dimensions of being physical. Because in this universe, the only way to create is through polarity. So if there is light, then there is also dark. And if there is up, then there is also down. So the pathways of service to self and service to others was indirectly created as a cosmic byproduct from our eternal consciousness separating itself so that it can play inside its own illusions. It needed to separate itself into the polarity of up and down so that it can create. Vibration is the movement of consciousness upward and then downward. But polarity also created the opposite force of love and truth, which is fear and denial. The forces of love and of fear created pathways that are manifestations of each of them. The service to self pathway originates from the cosmic force of contraction or fear. Fear contracts and closes itself off so that life force is only focused on itself. It seeks to only serve itself through controlling and through manipulating others. This is the origins of evil. And to a lesser degree, this is the spiritual roots of narcissism. Narcissism is both the perpetrator and the eternal victim because it is only focused on itself and it lives in denial of others. So instead of there being the fall or fallen beings, the way that we normally have perceived and portrayed that story of the fallen, in this cosmic origin story, more or less, what the theme around it is that there was accidentally, innocently, and a misunderstanding when it came to the drop, aka the fall of our vibration, the fall of our consciousness when it dropped deeper into the material plane. And so when it dropped deeper into the material plane and it got to explore all of the themes here and access all of the different experiences here, that then it accidentally lost its connection to its eternal true nature, which is that higher vibratory rate, that higher vibration of spirit. And so in this innocent way of creating amnesia, this amnesia took over and locked the consciousness, an aspect of the consciousness, into the material plane. So according to this mythos, what is it that made consciousness drop all the way in vibration and then get stuck or locked into the physical realm? It was the cosmic force of narcissism, but it did not go by that name at first. It went by the name denial. Denial is a force in the cosmos. Denial is what is known as negation. When we negate something, that is known as denial. So, when we're creating from something, we need to separate that creation into different parts. And that's what denial did at first. It was simple and it was innocent and it was all a misunderstanding. Denial simply just helped us cultivate an ego. It just helped us get away from the remembrance of being all that is for a few seconds. It helped us deny the truth, but in a very innocent and playful way, so that we can have a personal, egoic experience. But denial hardened on accident. It hardened because when it denied too much of truth, it accidentally got disconnected from it. And now, denial was experiencing itself still as the force in creation of separateness. But instead of separateness, it got ramped up and inflamed. And that turned into what we know today as narcissism. In some of the spiritual systems that teach this story of cosmic origins, we have two groups of people, once again. One that's the narcissistic end of the pathway of creation, which is service to self, and one that is service to others. And when that service to others beings come and try to awaken those that are lost in the material plane under spiritual amnesia, we can look at those as ones that are trying to awaken humanity out of their sleep state of spiritual amnesia. They're trying to awaken them. Well, what are they trying to be awakened out of? They're trying to be awakened out of the dream of separateness, and they're trying to be awakened out of the dream of them being lesser than source. So basically, anytime beings come here to assist humanity out of the state of spiritual amnesia, what they're trying to do essentially is remind them of their own divinity, remind them of their own personal godhood. And what the service to self beings, the pathway that represents narcissism, is trying to do is to twist those teachings, those same teachings that are empowering and helping lift the vibration of consciousness so that it can choose to incarnate back here from its own free will, from its own liberated state. So the material world is not bad and it's not evil, but a person can be lost in it if they aren't awakened back to their original vibration of remembrance, remembering that they are source, consciousness. And the service to self pathway is not going to teach way different things. They're going to take what the service to other truth and the service to other gnosis is giving and just go and tinker with it. Just go and twist it and slowly manipulate it so that then the pathway can now start shifting from empowered being of oneness, from a person who's awakened into a higher state of oneness, into one now that accidentally and very innocently is pushed down the pathway of service to self. What will that look like when you take teachings that are empowering about oneness and you twist them slowly and manipulate them into serving the self? It will manifest as religious programming that seeks to stop you from remembering your true divinity. It will manifest as spiritual teachings that do the entire opposite of that and try to feed your ego into narcissism. It will look like teachings that try to stop you from integrating your being into wholeness. It will manifest as institutions that seek to enslave you while they pretend they are protecting you. It will manifest as mental techniques to manifest or manipulate other people's will and other people's freedom. Because the number one goal of the service to self pathway is to control others. So it will use any possible way to twist the truth in order to maintain its control. And how we play this out in our personal lives will look way more innocent, but it's still coming from narcissism. We become narcissistic when we project onto others and when we seek to control another person's will. When we seek too much control in this reality, that accidentally leaves us vulnerable to becoming service to self or following the narcissistic force and pathway within creation. And it's completely innocent. It's when we start to seek so much control around our environment that we want to manifest everything. And when we want to manifest it, we specifically want to start manifesting things that are counter and things that are oppositional to other beings inside this creation. So in order to awaken out of this cosmic drama, and in order to awaken out of the dream of separation, we have to open the heart center, because the heart is how we will be able to embody truth. This is the true meaning of come as you are. Come as you are means do not deny yourself. Allow yourself to be seen as you are, because until we see ourselves clearly, we will deny and narcissistically project onto ourselves. And then we will project onto others. Narcissistic wounding is the wound of not being seen clearly. When we are not seen, it is because we were projected on. So narcissism begins with projecting. This traumatizes the soul, and this is what leads a person down the service to self pathway. So from a metaphysical perspective, the force of narcissism is when we project. And that's so funny because we project ourselves into this experience right now. We project ourselves into a dimension. And we project all day long the way that we see our reality. So projection in one sense is very organic and very natural to nature and to creation. But yet it becomes service to self, and it becomes deeply narcissistic when we only see our own mental projections. And that is the default settings of this reality. What default settings mean is that everyone will project. And the only question becomes, will we be able to do the inner work to clear out our mental projections? It is our mental projections that are causing the narcissism that we see in the world. We only see narcissism as a third-dimensional human problem, where one person is being selfish or one person is being traumatized or manipulative. But instead, the whole conditions of our reality are narcissistic, and we don't see that. The whole conditions of our environment, of our atmosphere, are entirely narcissistic because we all are projecting onto each other. And when we project our mental, psychic impressions onto one another, that creates an illusion. That creates fictitious characters that we all walk around as. We're not walking around as true beings who know thyself and then who have done the inner work to know others. So that's why truth can't exist in that environment of narcissism. Because what happens is, to a weak mind or to an unawakened mind, they don't know this, but they actually will start acting like whatever those things that were projected onto them are. Or what they'll do is entirely rebel from those projections and fall into another character. So when we're in a lower state of consciousness, we don't know what's going on, but our subconscious still senses it. It still doesn't like the fact that it projects and that it's being vastly projected onto by others. So what it does is it starts to lose its own connection with whatever its truth is, because it was never nurtured into truth in the first place. That's why inner work and mystery schools, whatever secret orders that help us through some sort of spiritual system come into our own awakening, are always first telling us and teaching us to deal with our own mental projections, because that is the first source of all of the violence that we see in the world. No matter how far removed it is, no matter how far away it looks, it all began with the narcissism of our mental projections. So, when we can't see ourselves clearly, or we can't see others clearly, we project. That is the default settings. That is when we refuse to gain any sort of understanding and intimacy with whatever we are looking at. So if we're looking at a person and we're projecting onto them, we're being narcissistic, even if it's on accident. Because what we're doing is we're looking at that thing, and instead of saying, what are you? Let me learn about what you are. Let me understand. Let me understand who you are, what you are. Instead, what we do is we just project all sorts of narratives onto one another. And when we project these narratives onto each other, not only does that create barriers, and that creates their own boundaries that solidify into narcissism, but at a psychic level, energetically, we can sense what's going on. So even if we're not conscious of it, even if we're not awakened at all, our energy field can pick up on the fact that there's these impressions, aka projections, that are being impressed on the field. And that creates psychic reactivity. So everything starts off in the energetic level first, before it starts solidifying into physical form. So you have these two different layers of reality that have as the core root of all the different forms of conflict, whether that conflict is interpersonal or societal. And all the different forms of violence come first from these unconscious projections of us not being able to relate to one another and relate to the other, service to others, through the condition and the quality of love. Love is open. Love doesn't project. Love understands through the act of intimacy. So love is one that connects. Love creates connection through the act of intimacy. Intimacy means to understand and to know another, or to understand and to know thyself. And narcissism is the pathway that mentally projects all of whatever its insecurities are, all of its trauma, all of its wounding, all of its hopes, all of its fears, all of its desires onto the other. So projection in this case doesn't always mean that it's a negative thing, because we can project our hopes and desires and our wants and our excitement onto other people as well. And that will still not be love, because once again, to project onto others is to not see them for as they are. And this all serves a much larger purpose, because the true origins that I was speaking about earlier, when it comes to service to self and service to other pathway, and how consciousness fell, it dropped in vibration into the material realm and accidentally got locked here. It got stuck and trapped in its form because it forgot how to shift its vibration higher. All of that creation story came from a very innocent misunderstanding. And what that innocent misunderstanding was in creation was that I could mentally project onto the other, and the other isn't true as well. The other isn't as more real as I am, so it can do my will. If I project whatever it is onto the other, whether it is for them to act in a certain way, whether it is to have them do my bidding, whether it is in some form or another, I am not acknowledging their will. I am projecting onto them my will, whatever I want. That is the core origins of narcissism. There's a larger purpose for the way that our time-space was created. And it was created so that we undo this cosmic dilemma of being stuck or even trapped in the physical form. And how we heal this, how we undo that, is by lifting our vibration first through the act of truth, of acceptance of what is in any form it appears as. This would be what's non-resistance to reality. And when we're in non-resistance to reality, we are not forcing it or manipulating it to be a certain way so that we can continue our narcissistic mental projections onto it. Instead, what we're doing is first aligning ourselves with the higher vibration of love, and love is freedom. So first we tap into love is freedom, and love in this sense is connection or intimacy. So when we are lifting our vibration out of this sleep state, the first thing that our higher self designed for us to do before all of the cool things like we can manifest is come into alignment with reality exactly as it is. This means that we seek what the truth is. That doesn't mean we have to get hyper paranoid about it and we have to be super diligent in truth. I'm talking about truth as it appears in any moment. So we just understand ourselves. That's truth. That's an act of self-love. So when we understand ourselves, that's why it's equated with becoming more self-loving. It's because now we're not trying to make ourselves a certain way because we don't like ourselves or we want to manipulate the truth. First, we just want to see exactly what we are. And so that is the first roots of being able to then extend that act of generosity and love onto others. We truly cannot give this gift to others until we have given it to ourselves first. So when we're able to look at ourselves and to clear away our own mental projections that we have had placed on ourselves by others, and we have placed on ourselves, which we call the ego. Now we start seeing what is beyond that ego, what is deeply internal to us that is true. And from that place, now we can extend that love to others. And when we extend that love to others, it would be by removing our mental projections of them. Whatever we thought was true, whatever our psyche had placed upon them, and start to see and connect with who they are and what they would be like without our own unconscious projections on them. And that is how we lift the vibration of our consciousness and the environment around us. That's what shifts the atmosphere. Nothing else can truly energetically shift until we first deal with what caused those to be locked into its narcissism in the first place. And that is mental projections. How on earth did something as common and natural as projecting get turned into something so twisted and dark and narcissistic? It's simply because the service to self pathway has a very major feature to it that is not well known. And that is the service to self, the narcissistic pathway within creation, can only see what it wants to see. That's all. When we're so confident about something and we refuse to change our mind or to see it deeper or clearer or connect with it more, that is narcissism, and that is in a service to self pathway. Because it only can see what it wants to see. So on accident, service to other beings who are growing, who are working on themselves, can become service to self if they narrow their viewpoint so that they disconnect from love, which is all, which is the truth of all. And they disconnect from that and they only start seeing whatever they want to see because now they've limited their viewpoint. And it's going to sound very empowering or it's going to sound very compelling. And it's even going to be dressed up as inspirational. and it's all a complete misunderstanding. It accidentally, no matter how good intended we are, it accidentally leads us to a service to self pathway when we can only see whatever we want to see. Now, this doesn't mean that we stop seeing what we want to see because we're powerful creator beings. This just means that we see all of truth, all of reality, exactly as it is in its proper context. So it means that we live in truth. And from there, we're able to see what we want to see. And that makes us far more powerful because we're aligned in truth, both the negative aspects of reality and the positive aspects of reality. And so we're able to see what we want to see, but also be able to see everything else as well. And when our perception is able to become that expanded and that conscious, that's when we're truly able to be service to others, because we're able to embody love. Love is freedom. Love doesn't twist things and manipulate others in order to be whatever their mental projections are telling them they are. Instead, love is open, and love gives equal power, equal will to all others because it's service to others. So with that, we're able to embody and be more love. I hope this has helped explain the fall. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakening. See you next time.